Welcome to the Season 1 Back to Basics APC Roundtable Talk. I'm your host, Nyadzani. But before we get started, don't forget to like, share, comment, and click on the bell button below to subscribe to our channel. So before we begin, I would like to introduce you to the movers and shakers of Back to Basics. The first one being Pindi, who is a qualified chartered accountant and the Back to Basics founder. She has experience in education, teaching, and learning and development within the industry. My second person is Sanazo. She's also a qualified chartered accountant, passionate about education, teaching, learning, and development within the industry. Then we've got the thorn amongst roses, which is Ronaldo, who is recently qualified as a chartered accountant and currently working as an IFRS specialist in financial reporting in industry. And lastly, we have Yandisa, who has a master's in psychology and is a spiritual and life coach who aims to provide insights to her clients in industry. Okay, so before we get started, guys, I have a little bit of an icebreaker game for you guys. So how it works is I'm gonna ask each person 3 questions. You answer the first thing that comes to mind. Don't think about it. It's not a CTA exam. It is not an APC exam. Just answer the question. Please, let's not be accountants about this. All right, my fellow comrades. So Pindi, summer or winter?
Definitely summer.
Sunrise or sunset?
Definitely sunrise.
Money or fame?
Interesting. Fame.
Okay. Sanazo, books or movies?
Movies.
Okay. Are you an introvert or extrovert?
Definitely introverts.
And would you prefer multiple choice or an essay?
Multiple choice.
Okay. Ronaldo, spicy or mild?
Spicy, definitely spicy.
Okay. Picnic or fine dining?
Fine dining.
Black and white or color?
Black and white.
Okay. Then Yandisa, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl, definitely.
Beach or safari?
Beach.
I would say safari because it's so cold. All right, awesome. So today's issue that we'll be discussing during our podcast is time management. So our fellow comrades sitting on stage are going to provide us with a few tips and tricks and insights in relation to time management being an issue in APC. Okay. So I'm going to start off with you, the founder of Back to Basics, Pindi. As an experienced marker and script reviewer, what are the most common issues that you identify when reviewing scripts in relation to time management?
All right, cool. So the biggest issue that we've identified is when we are reviewing a script and we get to the very last task. You will literally see one or two sentences wherein the individual is saying, "Oh my God, I didn't have time to review the task at hand. Therefore, please, can we arrange a meeting?" And then if you compare to the very first session that we had, and you realize that with the first task, someone wrote like 5 to 10 pages. So that means that they exerted absolutely all their energy on the first task and forgot that you have 7 other tasks rather, or it depends however many tasks were in that paper. So that means that most of the time candidates exert all their energy on the first task, trying to prove that I do have the knowledge for this first task. Or in the other instance, we get candidates who identify that I'm stronger in strategy, for example, or I'm stronger in ethics, and they'll start with that task. And that's where we see that someone went and wrote 10 pages on ethics just to prove that I do know this paper. So there, what we have identified is people exerting too much time on one task and failing to level out and plan how to respond to each and every task and give it the same level of energy and time as well.
All right, perfect. I think I'll open up this conversation to Sonazo and Ronaldo. What have you experienced during your 2023 script reviews regarding time management, or has Pindi covered the main issues?
So Pindi has covered most of it, but just to add to those points, another thing that I've noticed is that to begin with, candidates don't have a plan for managing their time. For example, when you ask them at the beginning of the session, okay, so how do you plan? What do you commit to spending specific amount of time on a task before moving on? And most of them don't have that. Like, no, I just start with task A, and then once I'm done, I move on to task B. Then from that conversation, you can pick up that they're not giving all the tasks equal time. For example, now, if you're going to spend 2 hours on task A because it's accounting and you think it's more important, or you think, oh, I studied the standard, so I know more about it, you're going to have 30 minutes left for the last task. And you could have, had you given it equal time, you could have been able to get majority of the points and pass. So we are encouraging them to use a planning document, which is one of the tools that we'll get to discuss in some other time. But it's something that we encourage them to do so that they can plan at the beginning to say, I'm committing to 50 minutes per task. Then at the end, if I have time left, I can come back and add more points where I felt like I needed to say more.
Okay, perfect. Ronaldo, from your script reviews, has there been anything that you would like to also add on to what Pindi and Sonazo have mentioned?
Yeah, so just to touch on a little bit more on what Pindi and Sonazo said. So just a bit, just to reinforce what they said actually. So what we saw was from our scripts, it did seem to go well in the beginning, and then it sort of tapered off, and then towards the later tasks, they sort of, then you'd see the BCs, the LCs, and then you would say like, no, but like, it started off well. Like, you started off, you were getting C's, you knew what you were talking about, seemed well, then what happened? And then they'll tell you like, no, listen, time, and that's like a common thing that we all like experience when we did our script reviews. And like doing the exam, we also know that like, you have 8 hours, you need to manage it, and like Sonazo said, you have to sort of get the planning, right? So you have to plan. You have to say, okay, task A, I'm going to do 1.5 hours, then I got 6.5 hours left. How am I going to manage that to answer the remaining 7 or 6 tasks, however long it is? So I think, that's important as well.
Okay, perfect. And can completely relate. Like, the first 2 tasks are always time traps in APC. And then I can just, I just see myself moving on to the 3rd and 4th task, and I'm like, where did all the time go? So I think those are very valid points. So Sonazo, what is the back to basics methodology for actually dealing with time management? Is there like a 5-step approach, or is there a plan in place that we can let the viewers know who are watching today?
All right, so thank you for that question. As I mentioned briefly earlier, we focus on planning. It's very important, and we encourage the candidates to plan beforehand. So what we have done is we've created a template in the form of a planning document that they can use. Essentially, it but encourage them to think about their answers beforehand, before they start writing, so that they can manage the expectations in terms of how much it's going to take. But before I go to that, I want to start by how they read, how much time they spend reading. Because the first mistake that candidates make is to read through the whole pre-release information and then start writing. Because if you're going to read from the first document to the last one, by the time you come back to task A, you have to read again. So say that, be efficient in your reading. Read the information for the first task, for example, plan it. Think about the whole structure. We share the document with the candidates, but it shows you that it starts from the beginning to say, how much time do you have? How much time are you going to have left over, so that you can manage your expectations and be realistic in terms of how much time you can spend on that task. If it's at 10 a.m., you already know that if you spend an hour on that task, how much time you left. Then think about the required. What exactly are they asking for? How many parts does the required has, so that you can look at those and ensure that, okay, if they're asking for 3 things, this is the information, this is what I have picked up I need to cover for each part. How much time do I have? Let me think about my points first, so that when I start writing, it doesn't take long. I don't keep deleting paragraphs, starting over because I did not brainstorm my answer beforehand. So planning, think about the overall answer before you start writing, helps them become efficient. And then letting go. I cannot emphasize that one enough. Even if you have thought about 5 things to write, if the hour is over and you've written 4 things, please move on. Rather attempt the other task and then come back to add more.
All right, perfect. I'm going to open up the floor to everyone. Is there anyone who wants to add on to what Sonazo's mentioned in terms of the back to basics approach for time management? I've got a follow-up question, and I'm sure a lot of candidates experience it. How much time do you actually spend planning? For example, if you're saying we shouldn't read the entire pre-release, we should take it task by task, and let's say we allocate 1 hour to each tasks, and it's 8 tasks. So how long should one actually spend in that hour planning, before they actually get into writing? What's the recommended approach? Because I can just imagine that coming through on the commentary.
So there, I would say it's the IOD. I know we always like to confuse the pre-release and the IOD, and in this instance, the IOD is what we're referring to. I would say that we're not going to give a hard and fast rule to say you need to spend 5 minutes planning or 10 minutes planning. And also this is because Psycha is trying to test your ability to apply your mind. So hard and fast rules in the APC do not work. It all depends on the task, and indeed it depends on practicing throughout, wherein you need to make use of the planning document throughout the year until you are comfortable with it, to say, okay, now I know if I read through a task the first time I read through it. So first time you read through it, you're not reading through it to identify specifics per se, but you just want to get a feel of it. That can take 1 to 2 minutes, but remember, not a hard and fast time that we're recommending. Then the second time you're reading it, now you're reading to plan using the planning document. But now that also depends on practice throughout the year, not a hard and fast rule. It depends is the answer. So I think this is what IFRI's technical specialists always respond to when you ask them. It depends, right?
If I can just come in there, I think importantly is one's mindset prior to embarking on any sort of effort, endeavor. Where are you in terms of your mind? And it's that being conscious of who you are, self-awareness. I think trying to maintain some form of boundaries generally in your life, and the ability to understand oneself, which will enable you, to cultivate that self-confidence and increasing one's emotional intelligence, so that prior to going for the exam, you are ready mentally, physically, and psychologically. You've got strategies in place that assist you prior to you even starting to prepare for the exam. It's important to be aware of your strengths and obviously the tools that Back to Basics offers, being very close to them. But self-confidence is what really helps us in any individual, in any endeavor, especially when you're going through such an somewhat intimidating and complex exam. It is doable, but one's mindset is likely to ensure your success.
That's great. Thank you so much. Guys, self-confidence. I hope you are taking notes and just, clicking on that. Before we round up as well, I just want to ask Ronaldo, you just recently passed the APC 2023. Congratulations. I just want to ask, what other tips and tricks did you use that helped you with time management in this recent APC?
Yeah, so just to talk on a little bit on what Pindi said actually. So I followed the back to basics approach because I remember 2022 when I wrote, I sort of read the whole IOD, right? So I read the whole IOD, and what I found was when I had to go back to, okay, so I read the whole one, then when I went back to task A, and then I had to read it again, because like Bindi was saying, you don't remember everything that you just read, so you're going to have to look at it again anyway. So what the approach I did in 2023 was vastly different. What I did was, so I said, okay, I have a fair idea about what the IOD is going to look like, because I did the pre-release, right? I read the pre-release every day, and I was like, okay, so I know fairly what the pre-release entails, so I know what the IOD, what's going to take some time. Obviously, historically, the accounting questions, because they want you to go into it a bit more, so those do tend to take a bit more time. So I said, okay, for my task A, my task B, I'm going to allocate a little bit more than an hour, right? So then for my task A, my task B, I did allocate a little more than an hour. And then what I did was, on the IOD, I sort of read task A, and I said, okay, so now I have a fairly good idea. That's how it evolved from the pre-release period. This is what they're asking now. Okay, now let me read it again. Second time I read it, now I read it with planning in mind. Now I was writing down details. Okay, so this is the person I need to respond to. This is my audience. This is the tone. They want it in this format, email. This is what they're asking. This is the technical around what they're asking. Okay, so now I have a plan. And yeah, so then I sort of built everything into my 1.5 hours. My reading twice, my planning, and then obviously my typing. But when I got to my typing, because I planned properly, I wasn't like taking out sentences, scratching things out. Because my planning was so solid, I made everything fit. And when I was typing, I was just flowing. And yeah, then I found like there was enough time for every question. So I didn't run into that issue of, oh, I'm at task F or G, but now there's no time. Let me just give something, so they don't give me a NC, let me just give something, and then hopefully they'll say, okay, you attempted it, it's good enough. But yeah, so I felt I had enough time for everything.
All right, perfect. I'm not sure if anyone has anything further to add. Okay. Last but not least, Diandisa, I think, we need your psychological expertise here. As APC candidates or people going through this journey, we suffer a lot from anxiety and panic attacks and other mental health issues. So my question to you today is, how does anxiety and fear play a role in time management, and what tips or natural aids can you provide to us to deal with these symptoms?
Thank you for the question. Fear can cripple the mind, and it will lead to emotional reactions like anxiety and their inability to cope, as you mentioned, panic attacks. I think importantly is one needs to have an inherent motivation where, as a result of your self-awareness, you understand and know the self, by either spending time getting to know yourself or getting feedback from peers, if you are in a work context, from line managers, from family, and also just spending time alone. If you take a long walk, or if some form of outlet you use to spend time alone and really just get to know the self. So importantly, self-awareness and having the right kind of support in your social structures. Support goes a long way when you've got the right kind of people who can provide the sort of support that says you can do it. But mainly it needs to come from you. Then what happens is that you are in a right space to sort of elevate some of the pressures, the anxiety. You're always going to find yourself, being prone to anxiety when you're about to write an exam of this magnitude. But what I can just say in summary, so be self-aware, have your inherent motivation, have your support structure that can help you, even if it's a talk, even if it's someone who says, no, go to Back to Basics. Let's say you're not aware of the existence of Back to Basics. There is such an institution that can help you in the process to qualify as a chartered accountant. And another thing that is also very important is have a way that you use. Exercise is very important in managing anxiety. Proper nutrition is important in managing the self so that you are less anxious. And, self-talk goes a long way. It has to come from within. No one is going to help you, even if you do have the right kind of support. You need to have that inherent motivation to believe in yourself. Before you embark on exam. It's not going to be an easy process, the preparation phase as well as the actual exam. But if you are going there with a positive mindset, I think if we start to build on our emotional intelligence, the ability to regulate one's emotions and have an understanding of other people's, the emotions behind their behaviors, it's important then to sort of improve your emotional intelligence as well. By reading up and, like I had mentioned earlier, getting feedback, being very self-aware, it goes a long way. Because not everyone has the benefit of having people to support them. So if you can, they say someone who's able to live in isolation and live alone has got a very strong, is very strong mentally. So you need to do the work to ensure that you've got the right strength within you, to live life and forge ahead and have the fortitude to overcome setbacks, have the fortitude to wake up and say, I didn't have a good day today, but tomorrow will be better. So that self-talk really goes a long way in trying to curb things like anxiety and fear as you go for the exam and in the preparation phase. So I've mentioned everything. If I can just summarize, make sure that you take care of the self, mind, body, and spirit. Have the right kind of support. If you don't have the support that most people have that mental strength to sort of make sure that you build your own life and get ahead of your life by just motivating yourself. And then lastly, we always will be faced with anxiety and fear. Your mindset, the growth mindset, will help you curb such fears. Thank you.
Perfect. Wow, guys, that was quite an insightful answer. I'm also doing a checklist in my head as we speak. Before we round up, I just want to ask the Back to Basics crew as well, is there anything you'd like to add on to what Yandisa said?
I would say 100% I agree with Yandisa, wherein most candidates sometimes want you to tell them, okay, with anxiety, this is very quick, you can go to Clicks, get this thing, it will work. But then what we have seen is that candidates do take some medication from Clicks or from Discamp, but it makes them super tired instead of calming the anxiety, which goes back to Yandisa's explanation of that you need to work at it throughout the year. Find the strength in you to say, I can do this. And to reiterate, anxiety will always be there. If you gave me an APC paper today and I teach and I lecture APC almost every single weekend, I will also still be anxious. But because I can work on that mindset that, you know what, I can do this, I definitely can do it, I've got the power within me, then it curbs that anxiety. Wherein once you are like typing for the first 5 minutes, there's shaking. I was shaking physically. I'm a person who shakes when I'm writing and sweats as well. But then the more I keep going and the more I find that inner strength to say, you know what, I can do this. I did CTA, I did ITC. It doesn't matter how many times you've written all those exams, I can do it. I've got the mental capacity to do it. Then you'll see that anxiety will slow down, and that means you're writing quicker as well. You're writing more efficiently, hence managing time as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. You have been rock stars and superstars today. And unfortunately, we have reached the end of our podcast, but I encourage you guys to please add your comments, like engage with us, and you will definitely get a response from one of the Back to Basics APC mentors within 1 to 2 business days, or even within the same second. But yeah, please engage in our comment section, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I just want to leave you guys with one quote before we go so you can ponder on it. And that quote is, tough time never lasts, but tough people do. Tell me what your thoughts are. Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.